Hi all, I'd like to ask you today, the YouTube audience, when do you think forcing moves are good and when do you think they are bad? There's a recent book which seems to imply that forcing moves are really useful to you in being able to visualize, several moves ahead like a computer, and often, there are winning combinations which constitute often, forcing sequences, and you should always be on the lookout for them. So when are forcing moves actually bad, as well as when are they good? I'm going to look at this game I played recently, my first loss of the season, unfortunately. But I thought, I should expose my losses and draws as well as my wins to get a fair and objective assessment of my play. So I was black here. I played d5, and after e5 I played knight c6. So this is in Watson's Dangerous Weapons book. But perhaps I should have waited for white to play d4, but I haven't. So he plays it now anyway. And after f6, bishop d3, I play knight h6. So here we see the first forcing move. White takes on h6. And let's ask, is this forcing move good or bad here? It's good in that it causes structural damage. Of course, he can guarantee I'm going to recapture the bishop. Is this structural damage compensated, though, by the dark-squared bishop, and the dark squares being a bit weaker in white's position, especially as we'll see the f4 square. So that's a little bit of a controversy behind that forcing move. And now bishop b5. Although not a forcing move, it does actually pin the knight, and white strategically trying to get a grip on the e5 square. I played bishop g7, and after he takes on ef, so another forcing move, vacating e5 so he can occupy that with a piece outpost potentially. But after queen takes f6, castles, I castle, and he can't use a forcing move to gain domination, because after bishop takes c6, for example, and knight e5, I've got bishop a6 here. So if his rook moves, then queen f2. So he can't quite do that yet. So basically, he plays c3, and I play knight e7, and now after rook e1 I play knight g6, so the knight is heading for that sensitive f4 square. So has that earlier forcing move of his backfired slightly on the dark squares? I seem to have a very comfortable position, also able to contest the e5 if necessary. He now plays knight bd2 and I play knight f4. And now he plays another forcing move, chasing my knight. But I can go to h3, and is this going to be useful, though, on h3, or is the knight misplaced? Well, actually, I sense a tactical vulnerability here, the f2 pawn, and also this emprise bishop. So I liberate my position now using a pawn sack, e5. And he's got various ways of taking it, but knight e5 is obviously not pleasant after queen f2. Rook e5, though, and maybe queen b6. As in the game, he actually took the pawn, and it seemed as though after queen b6 I have a dream, attacking position out of the opening, where I'm attacking his bishop and f2 pawn. So he defends, and now bishop g4. And I have now various threats, and it's only move 16, and already I'm threatening rook takes f3, and if knight takes, then knight g5. He confuses the issue, though, in my mind by playing e6 a little. And I just wonder, should I parry this idea of e7? But I think rook f3 is by far the strongest move here. And I didn't, I should have really considered that more. What I did play was c6, which gives him the opportunity to play e7. But I did have something in mind when his bishop, retreats. After rook f8, bishop retreats, I had this other forcing move in mind, this rook takes e7, which I thought if his queen moves, then simply rook f7, rook f8. And, what is he doing about this pressure? That would be pretty dire, this kind of pressure on the f-file. How is he defending this? After, say, this is beautiful coordination of all the pieces now against, his vulnerabilities. So I think white's been carved up here, basically. But in the game, he actually sacrifices a bishop. Fine, I don't need to take it, though, so that's not a particularly good forcing move, because I can just play king h8 now and wait for his queen to move. So if it moves to d3, that's not particularly good because of knight takes f2. And if the queen moves again, then bishop h3 check, king g1, and there's a mate now in 8 minimum with knight g4. So this is a bit disastrous for white. In the game he actually played Queen F1, and after taking on E1 I was just a whole bishop up. So this is now move 22 against a 2200. I'm a whole bishop up in this club match, and I was thinking, well, you know, what's going on here? You know, is he going to resign this? This is almost resignable. But he actually just played knight E5, and here is where I played an extremely controversial forcing move, because I wanted to be able to develop my rook with tempo and keep the pressure going on these sensitive squares. So I was tempted into playing bishop takes E5. The problem with bishop takes E5 is that I'm slightly weakening my king's safety, and if he ever gets a rook to the 7th, then I'm going to miss that bishop on G7, because it was, you know, performing defensive duties, you know, and also protecting H6. And as we'll see, this forcing move, you know, basically by compromising my king's safety, I'm creating this greater onus to have to play more accurately later on, as we'll see, because after rook takes E5, rook F8, I've still got some issues here. For example, my queen is slightly offside, and these pieces are slightly, you know, offside as well, and you know, how am I going to get them out safely? He plays F3, and it seems, you know, there's no real threat that white has here, but actually, you know, he has got the threat of rook E7, and my position has got the potential for a disaster. So I played actually king G8 because I have that pin on the F pawn. I don't want any queen D3s or queen B1s with tempo gain of a check. He plays now rook E7, and here the alarm bell should have really been going off that rook E7 is dangerous. The danger level is increasing now around my king. I played bishop C8, and now he plays the move queen E1. And not only does this introduce the threat of queen E5, potentially if G4 is played, queen H4 will also be an attacking move with that queen. I move my bishop back to F5 because I'm really at this stage thinking, well, he can't play queen E5 because of queen F2, so that queen's kind of virtually pinned. But he now plays G4, and here I want to get my knight out, so I play knight F4 check. He does king H1, and now we're just one move away from time control at move 29, and I play a disastrous blunder. I have to play, if I want to keep any advantage in this position, my only move is knight G6, so preparing to give up material to get his rook off the 7th. For example, queen takes E7, and now queen takes B2, and I should be able to win this because I am the exchange up. But has he got checks here? Well, I think these would run out quite quickly. So say queen E5, king H7 now, and I should be okay. But basically, I played a disastrous move. I played knight D3, and after queen H4, I'm in real trouble. How do I defend my H6 pawn, as well as my bishop still attacked? And unfortunately, after queen takes B2, queen takes H6, this check is harmless because he's also defending his knight on D2. So this has turned into a real catastrophe from being a piece up. After check, king G2, he just, after queen takes C3, he just takes on F5, and now rook takes F5, queen G6, and I'm getting mated, unfortunately, because king F8, rook E8 mate. So basically, if we rewind this back, the critical moment where I think, you know, I shouldn't have been encouraged to play this forcing move is, you know, try and keep my king's safety, you know, intact, and just play bishop F5, even if, you know, it's potentially like seems to be losing a piece because he's got G4, because I had knight F4, and look at his king safety now. In this position, there's a very good resource for black, just queen takes B2, or even knight G6. There's plenty of alternatives here which give black an advantage. Knight G6 is also possible, as well as queen takes B2, and this would have been a great position where I'm trying to maintain my king safety. For example, G takes F5, queen takes D2. So really my main point here is there are forcing moves, and sometimes these compromise your position, and you've got to think very carefully. Do you really want to play them? Because sometimes they're not that great, especially if your king's safety is compromised. So if you're in this kind of position, you're about to give up one of your defensive bishops just so you can get in the move, more quickly. Think again. Give your opponent forcing moves, because in this case, so what if the opponent's going to have to play g4? They're weakening their position, their king safety. It's better to get the opponent to make committal, weaknesses rather than yourself. So that's, I think, a partial, discussion, I hope, from this video of when forcing moves are good and when are they bad. So I really want to make the case that sometimes, you want to avoid the forcing moves which create, king safety issues in your position, or think very carefully if you're going to do that. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.